Can you believe school is back already?
I know, right? The year is going by so fast. And this year, I'm going to help the schools in my neighborhood by donating through Donors Choose.
That's an amazing idea. Donors Choose is the most trusted nonprofit that connects teachers and kids to donors who believe in them.
And their site is so easy to use. Searching for a local school on their map and finding match offers to boost my donation is a breeze.
Visit donorschoose.org/local and give today.
Building a business may feel like a big jump, but OnDeck Small Business Loans can help keep you afloat. With lines of credit up to $100,000 and term loans up to $250,000, OnDeck lets you choose the loan that's right for your business. As a top-rated online small business lender, OnDeck's team of loan advisors can help you find the right business loan to fit your needs. Visit OnDeck.com for more information. Depending on certain loan attributes, your business loan may be issued by OnDeck or Celtic Bank. OnDeck does not lend in North Dakota. All loans and amounts subject to lender approval.
At T. Rowe Price, our curiosity lights the way to help you plan ahead for what matters to you most. Work directly with us, and together, we can help uncover the right investments for you at every stage of your life, whatever your goals. That's the power of curiosity. Better questions, better outcomes. T. Rowe Price. Invest with confidence. Visit troweprice.com/investdirect to learn more.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey, podcast listeners. Tired of ads barging into your favorite news podcasts? Good news. With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. Stay up to date on everything newsworthy by downloading the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free news. That's amazon.com/ad-free news to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
Hello, this is international football commentator Derek Ray, and you're listening to the Ranks FC podcast.
Hello, Rank Squad, and welcome to Ranks FC. It's your favourite football podcast, back for another week. My name's Jack Collins, and I'll be your host today. And we are not a transatlantic podcast today. Dean is otherwise occupied on family business, but I've brought in another member of the Ranks community. You know him from The Truth and Sky Sports and all sorts of different bits and bobs. It's my friend and yours, Mr. Dougie Critchley. How you doing, mate?
Hi, Jag. Yeah, it's a trans-London podcast today. Not nearly as glamorous, but southwest to southeast. Yeah, no, I'm very well. Thank you. I'm excited for, league football to return this weekend. It's felt like quite a long international break, but no, I'm very well indeed. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm excited about this one. It's, one we come to every year at different points of it, but it feels like the right time to start discussing the Ballon d'Or. Now, it's given out at the end of October, but I think during the international break feels like a good time to really have this discussion and get stuck into who we think is going to, who we think should, I suppose, lift that trophy. We can talk about who's actually going to at the same time. But before we do that, let's talk about some things we love. We haven't had things we love on Ranks for a little while because it's been a very busy period, but I thought your introduction here was a good time to bring it back. So I'm going to give you the floor.
Yeah, well, I did a little bit of a cheeky tweet at the weekend, and I'm partial to a bit of a cheeky tweet, a little bit of a wind up. And it came about because I was watching Finland versus England, which was a bit of a drag, to be honest, for most of the game. But Trent Alexander-Arnold did score a wonderful free kick, something he's known for, obviously, in the Premier League and throughout his time at Liverpool. And it really got me thinking. And maybe I was being a little provocative on the Sunday night. And I basically put on Twitter that a player this talented and this unique should be winning trophies year on year. Slots Liverpool could be that team, but it's a risk and unknown. I really understand why Real Madrid, in his mind, could be a safer bet to secure legendary status. And the Liverpool fans did not take too kindly to it whatsoever.
I'm not surprised by that, mate.
No, not totally surprising. I mean, I think obviously with Salah, with Van Dijk, with Trent out of contract at the end of the season, they're probably a little bit tense as it stands. And obviously with Danny Carvajal getting injured, the talk around Trent going to Real Madrid has really ramped up in the last few weeks. I mean, there was, I think, a fair amount of logic to it. You know, Real Madrid have won 6 of the last 11 Champions Leagues. They're in a league pretty much dominated exclusively by 2 sides, with a little bit of Atletico Madrid getting in there as well. There probably is a better chance of winning trophies consistently at Real Madrid than Liverpool, but Liverpool fans didn't take kindly to it. And I did quite enjoy the reaction and a little bit of a Sunday night wind up. So it's a little bit of a random one, but that's the thing I love this week.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's an understandable discussion to be having. And we were talking about this recently, Dean and I, on Patreon, about why Real Madrid would be attractive. And look, almost everybody's head is going to be turned if Real Madrid come to the table. That doesn't mean everyone's going to go. And for what it's worth, I don't think Trent will. But to kind of play down the attraction of going to a club like Real Madrid, I think is also mad. And we should be able to have these discussions without it kind of descending into, no, he would never do that, it's a betrayal, etc. And I understand, especially given the recent history between Real Madrid and Liverpool, why some Liverpool fans would see even them, or Trent, having a look at this as a potential betrayal of what came before. But equally, there is this period, and as you say, I think Stott's Liverpool are excellent, and I think they're going to be excellent, but there are no guarantees. You come into this season off a massive change from a legendary manager. We've seen how that's gone for various clubs. Manchester United struggling to come on from Fergie, but actually in this case, I think maybe more appropriate was Unai Emery coming in at Arsenal after Arsene Wenger. We know that Emery is an excellent coach, and we believe that his Villa side are brilliant, but that period didn't work. And sometimes coming in from a legendary figure, no matter how good you are, can lead to a transitional period. And, Trent has his career as well to think of. But I can see why it wound people up is the honest truth of that one. I don't think he'll be going anywhere, but I think it would be mad to suggest that he wouldn't even have a think about it at the same time. So, yeah, I can understand both sides of that argument. I've got 2 things we love this week, and one of them's football, well, both football related. One of them's kind of on-pitch related and one of them's off-pitch related, and they both come from listeners to the podcast. I'm going to start with this. I got a message from Alex Mansfield, who works for New Mexico United. And he messaged to say, I know Things We Love is very much designed to be organic and spontaneous, but I've thought often of you in the course of this campaign, given your fundamental belief in the beauty that this sport can bring and also your deep appreciation of the perspective that comes with it. I work for my local club, New Mexico United, and on Wednesday, Alex did send this a few weeks ago, so it's not quite last Wednesday, but it was a couple of weeks ago, we took the field for what we Americans dub a theme night, with the theme for this one being Kick Out Cancer. We wore pink kits, which were beautifully done and a classy nod to the cause, but what I really loved was that each of our boys played this game with someone else's name on the back of their kit, not just any name, but the name of a child who was battling or had battled cancer. So I looked into this, and there's more to it. Those kids also ended up joining the players in walking out onto that pitch. In the night, it was New Mexico against Phoenix, and the players also visited patients at the University of New Mexico Hospital before the game as part of the initiative as well. The kits were auctioned. All the profits went to the Pink Warrior House, which is a local organization committed to fighting against breast cancer, and they're donating all of the profits from their Kick Out Cancer kit sales to the same organization. And I thought, in a nice kind of fate rewards the good kind of moment, they've also clinched the number 1 seed in the Western Conference of the USL Championship, which is, I think, the 3rd tier in America. And so we'll have home advantage to the playoffs. So best of luck to the black and yellow. I know the colours close to both mine and your heart, Diggs, and to Alex as they go through the postseason. But I thought it was a lovely message and an incredible thing that New Mexico United do. And I just kind of wanted to highlight it while we were here.
Yeah, I think that's really special, to be honest. It's lovely when you see clubs go through and do initiatives like that on their own back. We saw a few years ago, I can't remember the specific club actually, but they came out with, I think, their grandparents to signify or to show support to people going through loneliness, which I think is a cause that doesn't potentially get enough sort of a spotlight in major sport. We've seen, clubs like Roma, I think they shared social media images of children that were missing a few years ago. These are quite special initiatives. And for this club as well to get involved with that sort of initiative is really, something that should be applauded and supported. So well done to them.
Yeah, shouts out New Mexico United and shouts out to Alex Mansfield who sent that in and brought that to my attention. The other one's a bit more of an on-field matter, and our patrons would have heard this when I was discussing it on Monday, but this is from Simon Howling, and I thought it was good enough to raise to mythical status of going to the main pod because I really enjoyed it, because a lot of has been made of Bolivia winning their game against Colombia recently. And a lot is always made when Bolivia win at home about the altitude, right? And the fact that they play their games, they've moved actually from La Paz to further up the mountain. So they've gone from 3,000 above sea level to 4,000 above sea level. And I think a lot of it, you see the memes, and I saw BR Football posting about this kind of thing, the kind of big dog when Bolivia are playing at home, the little dog when they're playing away, that kind of thing. I think it's sometimes made a meme, but Simon wrote this in, and I thought it was a nice kind of bit of perspective on it. He said, I wanted to give some love to this Bolivia national team. I've been living and working in Bolivia as a director of football for a community academy for the past 5 years. For most of my time here, the national team hasn't been followed. People tend to either support Brazil or Argentina instead, because with blatant corruption at every level, players were often selected based on their connections or the city they were born in rather than their footballing ability. As a result, people lost interest and any hope that Bolivia would ever qualify for a World Cup again. That all changed on July the 19th, 2024, when Oscar Villegas was appointed as the new head coach. He dismantled the old regime and committed to picking a younger, hungrier squad based solely on talent, and it's paying off. With 3 wins from 3 matches, Bolivia are currently 6th in the table and the excitement is back. After we beat Colombia, the celebrations were wild with fireworks and parties in the streets. From day one, Villegas made it clear that the goal is to qualify for the 2030 World Cup, and he wants the younger players to enjoy and learn from these 2026 qualifying games without any pressure. No one is getting ahead of themselves, but at least people are finally enjoying the journey. Miguel Terceros, a 20-year-old attacker, is the poster boy of this new era. From the street projects of Santa Cruz to the lights of Santos, the former club of Neymar, who's an icon in these parts, is the kind of story that every Bolivian boy and girl can dream of. Of course, there are going to be complaints about the home matches being played 4,150 meters above sea level, but when you're ranked 83rd in the world, you take every advantage you can. If Luton can play Premier League games in what felt like someone's backyard, we can definitely play qualifiers at the top of a mountain. Sorry for the long message, but I just wanted to share the excitement and optimism growing in a country that for so long was holding itself back. Vamos Bolivia. That was a great message and a great story, and a little bit more depth on maybe a headline that often is portrayed as a bit of a joke, Diggs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is. I was just going to make that point myself until he made it so beautifully towards the end of that you're within your rights to use what other conditions you can find in your country. And if, altitude's going to be a key weapon, then go for it by all means. And I've been to Bolivia. It's a really special place, incredibly friendly people. And, a lot of it is at a serious altitude. It's not like, they've picked out the one stadium or the one city that's at altitude. That's a way of life for Bolivia and Bolivian people. So fair play to them and good luck with them as they try and get back to the sharp end of football in South America and across the world.
Yeah, 100%. Another one of our patrons, Luke, talked about this, and he was like, it's really nice to see the traditional whipping boys of South American football in Bolivia and Venezuela both playing really well and starting to actually, scrap for these qualification places. It's nice to see a little bit of variety in there as well. So, yeah, shouts out to Bolivia and to Venezuela for doing a good job in these CONMEBOL qualifiers. Right, we will leave part 1 there. After the break, we're going to be talking all things Ballon d'Or. Stick with us.
If you're a facilities manager at a warehouse and your HVAC system goes down, it can turn up the heat, literally. But don't sweat it, Grainger has you covered. Grainger offers over 1 million industrial-grade products for all your operations, including warehouse HVAC maintenance. And even better, they offer access to experts and fast delivery, so you and your warehouse can both keep your cool. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey, podcast listeners. Tired of ads barging into your favorite news podcasts? Good news. With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. Stay up to date on everything newsworthy by downloading the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free news. That's amazon.com/ad-free news to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
Your dining room is the heart of your home, where meals are shared and memories are made. At Ashley, you'll find affordable dining furniture in a range of classic and modern styles. Ashley small space sets and extendable tables are designed to fit beautifully into any space, from cozy breakfast nooks and kitchens to formal dining areas fit for a feast. And with mix and match seating options, everyone at your table gets the perfect seat. At Ashley, style is served. Shop in-store or online today.
Welcome back to Ranks FC, where it's time to talk Ballon d'Or. Now, the ceremony is at the end of October, so we will find out who is going to lift that little coveted trophy. We're going to discuss who we think should be lifting the golden ball. We're going to do our top fives, Dukes. But before we get into it, I think it's important for us to set out the parameters of this. So no longer is the Ballon d'Or a calendar year, thankfully, because trying to pull stats for that used to be an absolute nightmare. It makes it a lot easier to kind of examine and cross-examine people across the course of a season. And the three things that are spoken about are individual performance in the previous season, no longer by calendar year, team success during the previous season, and player behaviour and fair play during the season. It's voted for by a variety of journalists and given out by France Football at the end of things. But one thing that's quite important to not notice, because it's not necessarily new, but since Lionel Messi beat Robert Lewandowski to the trophy a couple of years back, they removed the kind of legacy element that used to be within these parameters. The kind of career as a whole that fed into it is now solely based on the performance over a singular season. And I think that's important in terms of how we look at this and how we decide who and we think should take that crown.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely vital. I think the best example where legacy has come into it is probably Luka Modric winning it in 2019. Like, I think he was exceptional in 2018, but that felt like more of a kind of lifetime achievement award in a season which Ronaldo and Messi probably weren't at their absolute best. So I think it's absolutely crucial that it's considered really on the basis of last season. And yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense with a lot of my suggestions as well, because I didn't really include any legacy in it. I really did reward 23-24 only.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go for it. We're going to run down 5-1 in a traditional ranking. We haven't had quite one of those for some time, but let's hear who you've got at number 5.
Okay. I think this is a bit of a controversial one, but I think it works very effectively for 23-24. I've gone with Lamine Yamal. Now, okay. I think a lot of people will be surprised by this, but it does work pretty perfectly, because although he made his debut at the end of the previous season, his first start for Barcelona actually came in August 2023. And he was man of the match on his debut against Villarreal in a 4-3 win. He provided 2 assists. And from there, it just he felt like a natural at that level. You know, by October, Barcelona extended his contract. They put in that €1 billion buyout clause, as they love to do, ever since they got stung with that Neymar release clause. Those buyout clauses have just gone up to ridiculous levels. And they obviously don't really matter. But it did go to show how significant he already became to the club. They've since done that with Pau Kubasi as well. But he was, quite interestingly, very much like eased into the side. You know, he got 1 goal and 2 assists in his first 18 league games of the season. And he only played more than 45 minutes in 7 of those fixtures. Yeah. So he does kind of work more as a calendar year player as well, because in 2024, it really, really did start to click for him. You know, he'd made his debut for Spain in September. He became the youngest ever player to play for Spain. And I'll get on to what happened at the Euros, but it was really in the second half of the season where he just went from strength to strength, finished with a pretty remarkable 7 goals and 9 assists in 50 games for Barcelona. The reason he's not higher on this list, I mean, some people might disagree that he should even be on this list, but Barcelona, it wasn't a great year for them personally. You know, finishing second in La Liga, kind of cut adrift from Real Madrid, reaching the Champions League quarterfinals and then being beaten by PSG. Although they were quite unfortunate in that tie, because they were quite secure until Kubasi was, I think, sent off in the first leg, I think it was. But, you know, Lamine Yamal had a remarkable year. He broke the record for youngest starter for Barcelona, youngest to provide an assist, youngest to score in La Liga history, youngest to feature in El Clasico, became the youngest player to ever start in the Champions League. And look, you probably get it by now. He's very young. But I think the fact that he's just taken to football so seamlessly. And then at the Euros, you think, this is a 16-year-old who's come off a really, really intense season. Will he be able to make the difference at that elevated level with the eyes of the world, with even more pressure on him? And I thought he was just absolutely sensational at the Euros. You know, provides an assist versus Croatia in their opening game, an assist versus Georgia in the last 16, an assist versus Germany in the quarterfinals. So by the quarterfinals, he was tied for the most ever assists by a Spaniard in Euros history. And then what does he do in the final? He scores the goal of the tournament against England, literally one goal of the tournament. He assists that goal for Nico Williams as well. He's named Young Player of the Tournament. And this season, even though it shouldn't matter at all, but he's just continued on that form as well. He's got 5 goals and 5 assists already in 11 games. And Lamine Yamal is joy. He is entertainment. He's just incredibly effective as well, just sort of mind-blowingly effective, just makes the right decision consistently. His execution is nearly always perfect. He's a brilliant dribbler. He's very creative. He looks a little bit sort of untraditional in the way he kind of dribbles and moves, but it's crazy effective. And he is just already looking like, if he doesn't win it this year, and I don't think he should, and I don't think he will, but he looks like he'll be in Ballon d'Or contention for the next 15 years, which is kind of a little bit intimidating to even think about. So for this year, I've got him down at 5. I'm interested to hear what, Jack, you think about this as well, because maybe it's a little bit high, but I did think on the basis of that winning the Euros, winning Young Player of the Tournament, that breakout year with Barcelona, I really wanted to reward him too.
Yeah, I mean, look, Lamine Yamal's been absolutely exceptional since the turn of the year. And I think you're absolutely right in terms of if this was still a calendar year trophy, then he would be higher. I think that first 6 months probably doesn't help him out too much. And that's fine because he was 16 years old. It's not like we're talking about someone who has to win it now or we're all in loads of trouble, right? But I do think that he's pretty much nailed on to win the Coppa Trophy, which is obviously given to the best player under the age of 21. I think it would be kind of wild to almost everybody if Lamine Yamal didn't win the Coppa. And I kind of had a look back at who'd won the Coppa in the past. Obviously, Jude Bellingham won it last year. Gavi won it the year before that. Pedri won it the year before that. There was none in 2020 due to COVID. Matthijs de Ligt won it in 2019, which is kind of wild thinking about the discourse around him now, but he was excellent that year. And Kylian Mbappe won the first edition of it in 2018. Now, Mbappe did the best out of those winners in the Ballon d'Or. He came 4th in 2018. But as you say, that was a Luka Modric year where it felt like there wasn't a real clear winner. And I think that opened up space for people to squeeze themselves into different categories and maybe Mbappe to be shoved up the order. He was seen as, the golden boy in so many ways. You look at 2019, Matthijs de Ligt finished 15th in the Ballon d'Or rankings. You go to 2021 to Pedri, and he came 24th in the rankings. Gavi didn't even make the senior list when he won it in 2022. And Jude Bellingham last year ended up coming 18th. So I think by proxy of him basically being a nail on for the Coppa, we've got to this point where I think he will probably finish a little bit further down the order, but I can absolutely understand your argument and why you might shift him up the order based on the impact that he's had at such a high level.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm interested to hear who you got at 5, Jack.
Well, at 5, I've gone for Florian Wirtz.
Nice.
Florian Wirtz last year was the golden boy of the Bayer Leverkusen team who went the entire the season unbeaten. He won the Bundesliga, the DFB Pokal, which is basically the German Cup. He won Bundesliga Player of the Season, and for club and country, he got 21 goals and 21 assists, which is lovely balance from everything. But I think generally you're kind of looking at this and thinking, well, he was just special for the entirety of last year. Now, I am a long-term Florian Wirtz, I would say apologist, but I don't think there's much to apologize for. He is just an exceptional footballer with the world at his feet. And I think that having come back from that serious injury to put together a campaign like he did last year and to basically be the creative lightning rod that took Leverkusen from kind of perennial also-rans to an unbeaten golden season in Germany and very close to an incredible unbeaten treble, which would have seen them pick up the Europa League as well. Now, obviously, Ademola Lookman and Atalanta put paid to that idea, but generally, I think across the course of he was just sensational. And the moments that Florian Wirtz came up with, we talked about Leverkusen pulling it together late in games, finding that extra gear in the added time in order to pull their results through the fire, to the way that they got through a couple of the Europa League, their round of 16, quarterfinals, semi-final games where they pulled something out of the fire. So often it was Wirtz who was the man who stood up and was counted. And for someone so young, to put together a campaign that consistent and that brilliant should be rewarded. Now, I think that because he plays in the Bundesliga, which is sometimes kind of cast aside a little bit when this award, it's a little bit harsh to always kind of look at it in the same way. But I do think that he should for this. I think that when you put together a season like this, you are the main man for a team as good as Leverkusen were for the entirety of last year. You have to be given the credit that you're due. And I think sometimes Wirtz is, just swept aside a little bit because there isn't quite as much interest as the Bundesliga as there perhaps is in the Premier League, obviously, but La Liga and Serie A to an extent as well. I think the kind of what he achieved last year is sometimes minimized by social media and by discussion around him. I think he's absolutely incredible. And the fact that he turned up for Germany in the Euros as well, and they put together a good run that obviously was ended by eventual champion Spain. But for me, that was the best and most high quality game of the tournament when Spain and Germany met. And if that had been the final, I think we would have deserved it in so many ways. So I think that sometimes because of the Europa League loss and because Germany went out relatively, in inverted commas, early in the Euros, he might just be being overlooked here. I am not going to do that. Florian Wirtz's season last year was up there with some of the best I've ever seen across the course of European football, and I'm just going to hand him his flowers.
Yeah, I totally agree, Jack. I've got him higher than fifth. He's in my list too, so I won't spoil my argument for putting him in there too, but it's very similar to yours. I absolutely love Wirtz.
Okay, cool. Right, let's go on to your number 4 then, Dukes.
My number 4 is maybe a little bit of a shock to English football fans. I've actually got Jude Bellingham. Now, I think a lot of people maybe have him higher. And look, he went off like an absolute rocket last year at Real Madrid. Obviously, that huge move from Borussia Dortmund, the pressure of taking Zidane's shirt. They didn't really get the striker signing that they planned to. And there was a certain amount of pressure on him. And he was playing a kind of new position, or at least being consistently used as sort of false 9. And it just went seamlessly from the start. He scored 10 in his first 10. That equaled Cristiano Ronaldo's record. He became the first Real Madrid player to ever score in their La Liga, Champions League, and El Clasico debuts for the club. Finished that year with winning the Golden Boy Award as well, which obviously voted for the best male under-23 player that year. He ended up scoring 14 in his first 15. Again, that was a record for the club. He became the first Real Madrid player to score in his first 4 Champions League games for the club as well. And that is quite crucial as well, because Real Madrid actually started the Champions League campaign, as they tend to do, quite slowly. And actually Bellingham popping up with like crucial goals at massive points towards the end of games, was absolutely massive of them to getting into the knockout stages. And they kind of built a bit of momentum as the tournament went on. He finished the season as Real Madrid's top La Liga scorer with 19 goals, also added 6 assists. He won La Liga Player of the Season, which shouldn't go amiss, given the fact that I think Vinicius Jr will probably come into these discussions as well. He finished the Champions League with 4 goals and 5 assists to his name. And look, it was the character that he showed in games, the sort of drive, the leadership, the way he would cajole teammates that were way more experienced than him at that end of football. And just kind of steer them through sheer force of personality, will, and that kind of maybe diminishes his technical skill as well, because I do think he's a remarkable player, but it does sometimes feel like it's kind of a cult of personality with Jude Bellingham. And then at the Euros, I think people are kind of slightly gloss over the fact that Jude Bellingham didn't actually play close to his best, I think, at the Euros. I think he was slightly cooked at that stage, understandably, massive campaign with Real Madrid. And he was kind of saying that at the time, like, I'm incredibly tired, etc., but still pops up with huge moments, grabs that goal in the opening game against Serbia, 95th minute equaliser against Slovakia in the last 16, a goal that people will always remember. England were going out at that stage, and then scores his penalty in the quarterfinal versus Switzerland. He gets an assist for Cole Palmer, if you want to even call it that. It was such a simple pass in the final versus Spain
Tom
as
Carroll
well.
assist, as they call them.
Yeah. And the reason that I'm saying that he can't be higher in this list for me is that whilst he was amazing in the first half of the season, 8 goal involvements in his first 9 Champions League games, the second half of the season wasn't actually that great for Jude Bellingham. He was suspended for 3 La Liga games in the second half of the season. He was injured for 2 more. He was left on the bench for 3 of their final 6 by the time that, it looked like La Liga was wrapped up and they were sort of keeping him fresh for the Champions League, let's say. So he only played in 10 of their final 18 league games. And Real Madrid were amazing last year. You know, they only lost 2 of 55 games all season, both against Atleti in the league and one in the Copa del Rey. They didn't lose any of their Champions League games. And Bellingham was crucial to that campaign, crucial, shouldn't be forgotten. But I think there was a Real Madrid player that for me has to be higher than him. And then I've got 2 more as well. So I think he had a great year. Massive respect to him. I'd be surprised, to be honest, if he didn't finish in the top 3. But for me this year, he just misses out and ends up 4th just because of slightly fading in the second half of the season, but still an amazing campaign.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same argument, and you're right. It's the same argument I would use for Lamine Yamal if this was a 2023 award. I think that there was almost certainly Jude Bellingham would be maybe top of the order. He was the best player in the world at the start of last season for 3-4 months, you know, as he kind of exploded into life at Real Madrid. But also his back end of the 2022-23 season with Borussia Dortmund was pretty impressive as well. So I've struggled with this. I've left Bellingham out of my 5.
Wow.
And
big.
That's why. The same reason that I left Lamine Yamal out, because I feel like the actual season here doesn't necessarily work in the same way. And I think there are 2 Real Madrid players. I wanted to have at least 2 Real Madrid players as Champions League winners in the 5, but I've got 2 ahead of him. So therefore, I've left him in 6th, stranded slightly there. But I am with you in that I think Jude Bellingham will be on the podium. I think he will finish 3rd in the Ballon d'Or voting this year. But I just left him out of my top 5 because I think that there are people who had more impact in the kind of championship rounds, if you will, to use a boxing term, of the season that actually had that impact. And look, if England had gone on and won that final against Spain, we'd be having a different conversation. And it's funny how you look at that and you think, well, can one game really determine how one season went? But I'm with you. I didn't think Bellingham was great at the Euros. Obviously, the 2 goals were exceptional, and the kind of one that kick-started England's campaign and one that saved its bacon. I completely agree. And I think that whilst he was potentially not let down, but the whole team sort of failed to perform in the same way that maybe a lot of people expected. We didn't see the kind of lightning strikes from the players who had lit up their respective leagues the year before. There is that kind of feeling that there was bits left on the table. And you're right, you know, you come to the second half of the season and yes, Bellingham's output didn't need to be as good because other players stepped up in his absence and that was fine. But the amount of games that you kind of mentioned there, which he missed towards the back end of that season, yes, Real Madrid protected him a little bit and I completely understand why they did that. It just felt like it was too front-loaded a season, I think, for me, when I'm looking at the space across it, and the international football matters loads as far as I'm concerned in the Ballon d'Or rankings, and that's why I've just left him out, because it just didn't quite reach that level of consistency or win and dominate during an international tournament. Those are kind of 2 things that I think propel people to the top of this list.
Yeah, absolutely, especially in an international year as well. I think the top 3 for both of us will probably be dominated by at least a couple of players, maybe even more, that won an international tournament this year. So yeah, I totally get the reasoning.
Well, at 4, I've gone for Dani Carvajal. So replaced one Real Madrid player with another. Dani Carvajal obviously won the Champions League and scored what I would consider to be the winning goal in the final, right? Because it was a 2-0 win and he scored the first one. So Dani Carvajal, by my money, scored the winning goal in the Champions League final. He won La Liga, he won a Supercopa de España, he won Euro 2024, and he got 7 goals and 8 assists from right back and racked up 21 clean sheets for club and country. Now, I didn't really expect to be sitting here doing this in some ways, but actually Carvajal's influence over the course of the last year has been through the roof. And I think actually when you look at this Real Madrid side and Spain side, he feels like the kind of de facto captain without being the captain. And I don't know if that's the most obvious thing, but when he's on the pitch, and often he is wearing the armband because either the club captain or his national captain has gone off the pitch and he kind of takes it off them. He's felt like the kind of leader and the heart, I think, of Real Madrid for some time now. And when you kind of look at what he's bringing to the table and what he has, delivered on a consistent basis throughout, and look, this kind of hurts that his injury that he suffered a few weeks back really hurt me. And I never thought I'd be saying that because Dani Carvajal has not been a player over the course of his career that I've adored. And there are certain right backs I really do love. he hasn't really been one of them. I've always thought he's a wonderful footballer, but he's the kind of player that gets under your skin a little bit. But his injury really took me aback, and I was like, wow, that's really made me sad. You know, the goals and the assists that he popped up with on that right-hand side for Real Madrid were incredible. But also I think that his defensive work is underrated. And actually, sometimes you look at where Real Madrid are and what they have going forward. You obviously spoke about Trent in the opening section. You think, okay, what you need sometimes is a player who is going to absolutely lock down a flank. And Carvajal has been doing that now for some time. I mean, he carried his Real Madrid form into the Euros where he was sublime. And actually, you look at both right back and left back for Spain in Cucurella and Carvajal, and it's very difficult to argue that neither of them were team of the tournament capability. I think that what he's won on both a club and country level puts him into the conversation. But generally, I think that sometimes you see that and you're like, as a player, been carried a little bit by other players. I don't think that's the case for Carvajal. I think he's been phenomenal on that right-hand side for Real Madrid. And I think it's probably about time a defender got their flowers. So I'm going to put Dani Carvajal at 4.
Yeah, fair enough. I think getting him in the top 5 is completely fair enough. I considered him. I really did consider him. And I do like the way that he's really bounced back from... was it around 2020? He had a really serious injury, kind of struggled with his form a little bit, and it felt like his time at Real Madrid might be coming towards an end. And what's he on now? 6 Champions Leagues, pretty remarkable. And yeah, his consistency for the majority of his time at Spain in particular, I think has been really, really right up there. I do have slight issues with, maybe I'm a bit of a sucker for the more eye-catching players, but he just doesn't grab me. And, you know, on pure achievement, he will definitely be remembered as one of the best right-backs of the 21st century. But for me, he doesn't quite entertain me in the way like a Dani Alves did. Or, you know, even, you know, provide the wondrous moments that someone like a Trent Alexander-Arnold with, or like have the sort of thrilling one-on-one pace that a Kyle Walker did at his prime as well. So maybe I've just factored in too much of my personal sort of desire to see a certain type of player. But I think that given the fact that he's racked up the amount of appearances he had for a club that did initially sort of sell him and then loan him or then buy him back from Bayer Leverkusen as well. So he didn't ultimately make it immediately from having come through at La Fabrica, I think is really impressive and a testament to his mentality as well. And look, on trophies alone this season, he should be definitely in the top 5. He just has never really, and I think you were kind of hinting at as well, never kind of excited me as much as other right backs. But on this season alone, I can definitely understand why you want him in the top 5.
Absolutely. All right, let's go into the podium positions. Who have you got at number 3, Dougie?
Well, at number 3, he's already been mentioned, and I didn't know that you were going to. I didn't necessarily think he was going to get a full shout out, so I went with Florian Wirtz. And I just think for a player like Florian Wirtz at a club like Bayer Leverkusen, 23-24 couldn't have gone better. Yes, they could have won the Europa League final, but honestly, it was close to the perfect season for a player coming off a huge injury, as you already talked about, and for a club that have been defined by failure for a long time. You know, they hadn't won a trophy since 1993. They hadn't even reached the final since, you know, that time. They hadn't reached a European final since 2002. They'd finished as Bundesliga runners-up 5 times, never winning the competition. And yet they absolutely strolled to it. They really did. They went completely unbeaten. Bayern Munich, you know, everyone probably thought it was going to come to an end at some stage, but everyone thought, it's going to be Leipzig at some stage. It's going to be Dortmund. No one saw it coming. And Florian Wirtz was absolutely sensational for pretty much the entirety of the year. His consistency never dropped, which coming off a huge injury deserves massive respect as well. You've already touched on what he did in the Euros in fairly limited minutes as well. He has huge performances in there as well. Probably in, as you say, not in the glamour games that you'd really want, you know, a couple of goals or a goal in the Europa League final. Maybe that sort of adds to his star. But he did score in a quarterfinal of a Euros, as you say, and also scores a hat-trick in April against Werder Bremen to seal the Bundesliga title. That was a massive game for Bayer Leverkusen. People were still worried that they were somehow going to blow it in sort of March, April time. He also provided, I think it was 3 goals he was directly involved in the DFB Pokal semi-final as well. Just a magnificent year for Florian Wirtz. And I wanted to reward Leverkusen because I think they were probably the story of last season. You know, Real Madrid winning a league and Champions League double. That's not to be expected, but it's not as remarkable as Leverkusen going, 53 games unbeaten until the final game against Atalanta in the Europa League. So Florian Wirtz was amazing. I also considered putting Alex Grimaldo somewhere near the top 5, but I didn't want 2 Leverkusen players in the top 5. So Grimaldo misses out, but Wirtz is in at 3 for me.
I think if Alex Grimaldo had played in the Euros and Spain had still gone on to win it, then there would have been a clamour for him to be involved here. And, I would put him in the same kind of category, but they didn't. And I feel like Wirtz was more of a lightning rod than Grimaldo for everything that was good about Leverkusen last year. As brilliant as Alex Grimaldo and Jeremy Frimpong, of course, were, it feels like Florian Wirtz is the poster boy, and those things matter, I think, when you're kind of looking at this, and the output's just absolutely ridiculous. But talking of output, this is my controversial call, because at 3, I have Lautaro Martinez. And
wow.
I think that this one is flying under the radar. Now, long-term listeners will know that this is not new, and I've been banging this drum for a while. But Lautaro Martinez last year won Serie A and won top scorer, capocannoniere in Serie A. He will probably be announced as a Serie A MVP, but unfortunately that doesn't get released until December at the Gran Calcio Gala. So we won't find that out until afterwards. He won the Supercoppa Italia. He scored a 91st minute winner for Inter to win the Supercoppa Italia. He won the Copa America. He was Copa America top scorer, and he scored the winner in the final in extra time against Colombia. 35 goals and 8 assists. And Lautaro was absolutely unplayable last season in Serie A. Now, things that will count against him, and why Lautaro won't actually finish here, is because he obviously missed a penalty in the shootout in their Champions League exit against Atletico Madrid. It's going to be one of those things that's remembered. And actually, I think it's interesting saying that, because every time Lautaro is brought up, people talk about his inability to kind of turn it on in the big games. And we saw obviously in the World Cup in 2022, which was meant to be his kind of big breakout moment. He ended up losing his place in the starting 11 to Julian Alvarez, and Argentina went on and won the tournament. And I think that was one of those things that goes against him in so many ways. But he was brilliant last season for the entirety of it. And I think that when you kind of look at, his drop off in goals, which did happen after sort of February time, he started to pick up assists. And so you get to this point where players start to double mark, triple mark Lautaro. And what happens? Well, Marcus Thuram goes on a scoring rampage across the court the second half of the season. And the reason for that is because Lautaro is having to be triple marked because everyone is so worried about what he has the capability of doing. And you get to that point where the start of this season, Thuram has continued. I think so much of that is to do with Lautaro being the guy that draws the enemy fire, if you will. He just seems to be the guy that picks up 2 or 3 defenders, and it allows the rest of Inter's sides to run right. I think it's part of the reason that Thuram has started this season so well. So Lautaro, for me, considering what he achieved last year in terms of personal achievement, in terms of club and country achievement, there aren't many that rival his, personal impact on the team that he had, and the team that he had then going on to be dominant in the league and his country winning, the Copa America. So I think that I don't think Lautaro will finish here for what it's worth. I don't think that he will end up on the podium at the Ballon d'Or, but for my money, he should be.
Yeah, sadly, I think anyone finishing the top 3 in the Ballon d'Or will probably have gone quite deep in the Champions League. And it just feels like Inter, as you say, getting knocked out by Atleti will count against him. And whether it should or it shouldn't, and, it shouldn't according to the rules because it is done on the 23-24 season, the fact that he hasn't started this season as well as last year, I think might just play in people's minds as well in terms of the voting as well. But, when you list his achievements, it was a pretty remarkable season. So massive respect to him. Unfortunately, people that don't watch him on a regular basis, that only tune in at the latter stages of the Champions League or at the World Cup, will still think that this is a bit of a bottler, really, which I think is massively, massively unfair. His consistency at Inter Milan for a number of years, playing with a variety of different strike partners, has been nothing short of remarkable. And yeah, I really love him as a player. I wouldn't have him in the top 3 for the Ballon d'Or last year, but I appreciate the shout.
Yeah, no, there it is. I was going to have one controversial one. We're going to take a break there. Afterwards, we're going to be talking about the top 2 and the 2 conspicuous names that neither of us have mentioned yet. We'll be right back.
If you're a facilities manager at a warehouse and your HVAC system goes down, it can turn up the heat, literally. But don't sweat it, Grainger has you covered. Grainger offers over 1 million industrial-grade products for all your operations, including warehouse HVAC maintenance. And even better, they offer access to experts and fast delivery, so you and your warehouse can both keep your cool. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey, podcast listeners. Tired of ads barging into your favorite news podcasts? Good news. With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. Stay up to date on everything newsworthy by downloading the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free news. That's amazon.com/ad-free news to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
Your dining room is the heart of your home, where meals are shared and memories are made. At Ashley, you'll find affordable dining furniture in a range of classic and modern styles. Ashley small space sets and extendable tables are designed to fit beautifully into any space, from cozy breakfast nooks and kitchens to formal dining areas fit for a feast. And with mix-and-match seating options, everyone at your table gets the perfect seat. At Ashley, style is served. Shop in-store or online today.
Welcome back to Ranks FC, where it's time to finally decide where that little golden ball is going, at least in our eyes. There are two names that haven't been mentioned: Rodri of Manchester City and Vinicius Jr of Real Madrid. It kind of feels that there's no point us beating around the bush here, Diggy. I think we should just clear up, put the cards on the table. Which way are you going?
Okay. That is a drum roll for people that can hear. I have gone with Rodri in second and Vinicius Jr as the winner. I'm not sure whether Jack will agree. I mean, why don't we just get yours out there as well, Jack? Did you have 2 and 1? Who was your order?
For so long, I had Rodri at the top of this list, and I was thinking about this morning, and one of the things I kind of really hadn't brought into play was this third parameter, which we very rarely discuss, right? We talk about individual performance, we talk about team success. The third parameter that comes into play is player behavior during the season. And I honestly think that there is so little separating what these two have achieved. Obviously, they're incomparable players in terms of what they do and what they bring to a team and what they do on the pitch. But actually, I think that Vinicius Jr should win the Ballon d'Or, because as much as he's been absolutely sublime on the pitch, the work that he's doing off it, in terms of standing up and combating racism in Spanish football, probably just pushes him to the top of this list for me. And it's interesting, when two players are so kind of iconic and had such brilliant seasons together, it's weird that you kind of come down that list and you're thinking, well, individual performances, both of them absolutely sublime. Team success, yeah, both have, different things in the tank. But actually, I think in terms of what Vinicius is doing for the game and in terms of accessibility, but also, pushing down those barriers, that probably gives them the edge as far as I'm concerned. So I am actually going to go exactly the same as you. Vinicius at 1 and Rodri at 2.
Yeah, I think you make a very good point. And for anyone confused about why I was kind of giggling when Jack mentioned player behaviour, I actually thought he was going to talk about Rodri being quite a bad loser as the reason that he put him at 2, not rewarding Vinicius Jr as he should do for his fight against racism, which I think is a huge, huge factor to produce the level of performances he has for a number of years now, with the disgusting racism that he's had to, live with on a number of occasions. It's not just one-offs as well. I think has been remarkable testament to his character as well as his incredible ability. I think there will be some Man City fans that are listening to this that are frustrated that Rodri has ended up at 2. And look, I have got nothing against if Rodri wins the Ballon d'Or. I'm not going to be furiously typing away on Twitter saying this is an outrage. I thought he was quite unfortunate not to win it in 22-23 when they gave it to Lionel Messi. I mean, also Erling Haaland was pretty unlucky that year, scoring over 50 goals, winning a treble. But Rodri was heavily, heavily involved in that treble too, obviously. And Messi really, really won it on the basis of that incredible World Cup. And who could begrudge him a final Ballon d'Or after everything he's given to the game? But Rodri, I think, was, even though the goals and assists went up last year as City kind of adapted to life without Gundogan, well, before his return, that is, I think Rodri had an even better 22-23 than a 23-24. But having said that, he was named player of the tournament at the Euros, which was ahead of Lamine Yamal, it was ahead of Bellingham, it was ahead of a number of other players.
Which was an outrage, by the way, because Fabian Ruiz was the best player at Euro 2024.
I was going to say, he wasn't even the best midfielder. It felt like just laziness. Everyone was like, oh, who's Spain's best player? And everyone was like, oh, Rodri, oh, we better give it to him. Like Fabian Ruiz was absolutely amazing that tournament. I think Nico Williams and particularly Lamine Yamal also had a better tournament than Rodri as well. But having said that, Rodri, still phenomenal last year. I saw a stat when I was doing some research earlier today. Since the start of 2023, Rodri has won 8 trophies and lost 4 matches.
Which is just, I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? Like,
it's just insane. And you look at some of his statistics, you know, he was first for long range passing for outfielders last year in Europe's top 5 leagues, which, considering he plays for a Man City side that love to play the ball short, remarkable. Passes completed, first in Europe. Passes into the final third, first in Europe. Passes into the penalty area, which you'd normally consider it to be a winger or an attacking midfielder. He was 26th, which is still pretty impressive. Progressive passes, so passes that go 10 yards towards the opposition goal. He was second behind Granit Xhaka, who was amazing for Leverkusen last year. And only Bruno Guimaraes won possession more in the Premier League last season. So Rodri literally did everything last year for Man City. 9 goals, 14 assists. He was absolutely remarkable. And for so long in the Ballon d'Or, with attacking players being favoured, it would be really, really, wonderful to see a defensive-minded player, even though Rodri last year was just doing everything, as I've already said. But for them to win would be really great. He'd be the first defensive midfielder since Samner in 1996, which would be an amazing story. And it would be richly deserved. And he's probably deserved one in the last few years at some stage. So as I say, I'm not holding it against him. But I just went for Vinicius Jr. And I'm interested to know your logic for Vinny Jr., aside from everything he's dealt with off the pitch, Jack, because it was a breathtaking campaign, particularly in the latter stages of the Champions League.
Yeah, I mean, this is it, right? You kind of tot up their seasons together. You go, Rodri got Premier League, Club World Cup, Super Cup, UEFA Super Cup, that is, Euro 2024, 12 goals, 15 assists. Vinicius Jr. from a more attacking position, obviously, 26 goals, 12 assists, Champions League, La Liga, Supercopa de España. So those two, they're 2 incredible CVs, right? It just kind of on the basics. And you come away from that and you think, okay, who was the most important player for their team last year? And whilst we talked about Jude Bellingham earlier and winning the La Liga MVP, I think a lot of that was due to the fact that they started so well. But who, to use that term of championship rounds again, who stepped up for Real Madrid when it came to the clutch period, when it came to actually getting these trophies over the line, seeing off the threats and making it happen? It was Vinicius. He was the man they looked to in that hour of need. And so often he delivered. And I used that term lightning rod a couple of times already, but I used it about Florian Wirtz. Very much the case for Real Madrid, Vinicius Jr. being that player, right? When they looked to get something late in a game, when they needed someone to cause a spark, the player was Vinicius Jr. And the way that he plays football, he is just so joyful in terms of what he does with the ball. He is such a wonderful player to watch. And actually, one of the things that I love about Vinicius, this isn't necessarily last season because it's happened over a couple of seasons, but when he came to Real Madrid, there was this kind of feeling around him that he kind of didn't get it. And that he was that player who couldn't finish the big chances. And it was actually Rodrigo that they looked to. And you remember that incredible mad game against Manchester City that they had a couple of years back. It was Rodrigo who was the man who stepped up in the big moments. It was Rodrigo who was the player that seemed to have that ability to pull out the magic moments of, out of his magic hat. And the narrative flip around Vinicius, the fact that he has become the guy that they look to in those moments, the fact that he has become an on-pitch leader in this team, the fact that he was the man that played through the middle at times last season when Jude Bellingham got injured and he suddenly went into this sort of bizarre number 9 role that was kind of anathema to him, but also quite interesting watching him pull teams apart. There was so much of this season to like. And I think that when you take him as a player and then you take him as a person as well, you're looking at someone who has the ability to, enlighten, but also to entertain and inspire. And generally, when you kind of look at that, I think he's exceptional. As I say, I'm with you. I think that either of these 2 players could win the trophy and they would be deserving. But I think you look at, the kind of things that have followed them round over the last couple of couple of weeks and you look at Vinicius' fight against racism in Spain on one hand, and you look at Rodri being disciplined by FIFA and suspended for his chants after the Euros were won, and you put those two things together, and I wonder if things are just going to err on the side of Vinicius. So yes, I'm with you. Either could win this trophy and be hugely deserving, but I'm just going to edge it to Vinicius based mostly on the off-the-field matters, I think.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair enough. This is a guy who became the youngest player to ever score in 2 Champions League finals. He became the 5th player in history to score in their first 2 after Samuel Eto'o, Ramos, Messi and Mandzukic. And you talk about that big game player.
Ramos is literally a polar bear in Arkansas there. What's he doing?
He's perfect for that meme. But yeah, you talk about the big game player, and you've already mentioned it. But that goal versus Dortmund in the final, he got 4 goals and 1 assist versus Barcelona across the season. 2 goals versus Bayern, 2 assists versus Man City in that quarterfinal, where Real Madrid were really, really close to being knocked out, and it went down to penalties. They just about held on to get it to penalties, and he scored 8 goals and provided 3 assists against La Liga's top 10 last year. He got 7 goals and assists in the Champions League knockouts alone.
Yeah,
and in the final, a pretty dire. It wasn't a brilliant final. Dire's maybe a bit far, but wasn't a brilliant final. But he was the sort of key man in that final. He completed 8 dribbles. He fired off 5 shots. He created 2 chances. And he was, for so much of that season, which included Courtois getting injured, which included David Alaba missing, which, as I've already touched upon, didn't really have that kind of ideal front 3 that Real Madrid probably wanted at the start of the year. Vinicius Jr was the spark down the stretch that got them over the line and won a league and Champions League double in a season that I think a lot of people didn't think Real Madrid were going to be as good as they were, given all the issues that they faced. So I think it'd be hugely deserving. What might count against him is the Copa America. He had a relatively poor Copa America. He got a brace versus Paraguay. He was suspended for their quarterfinal exit against Uruguay. But Brazil are a bit of a mess at the moment, and I think it'd be harsh to put that all on Vinicius Jr. I wonder whether that will count against him, though, because Rodri does have that player of the tournament in the Euros, which, as we've already discussed, felt a little bit of a joke anyway. But yeah, I think it will be Vinicius Jr., but I really wouldn't be surprised if it's Rodri. And either way, I can't wait to see the voting because I think it's going to be incredibly tight.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Look, that's a debate that everyone is going to have a different opinion on, and look, everyone's going to have their own top 5s to discuss. But I think that whichever way you end up falling on that debate between Vinicius and Rodri, you're probably justified in being able to find an argument for it, right? There really is a hair's breadth between trying to split these two, and it's incredibly difficult. I just wanted to touch on a couple of people we haven't mentioned quickly before we go, Dougie. One thing I would love to see is Toni Kroos in the top 5, because I don't think we'll ever see a retired player in the top 5 again. Like, to drop a season that masterful and come back to it and be like, oh, wow, I just decided that was it. I just decided I had enough. And literally walk up there and be, when it comes up with the club name, it just says retired, would be genuinely quite something, I think.
Yeah, that'd be awesome as well, wouldn't it? I mean, amazing year. And watching Real Madrid this season, they are missing him. They are missing him, as any club would. He was absolutely magnificent. Had a great Euros until they were knocked out, as you said, in that really tight game against Spain. And what a mic drop moment that would have been if he'd walked away with the league, Champions League and Euros in his final season. But wasn't to be. But yeah, who knows? They should be able to give, if it's on the basis of last season, he should be in the top 10, I would have thought.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he isn't. But obviously him being away from the game now might count against him in that regard, in that, sometimes you're not forgotten about. Obviously, Germany did a wonderful tifo to thank Neuer, Kroos, Müller and Gundogan at their latest game. I saw he wasn't
there, actually, which makes me worried that he's on holiday or something. So wherever you are, Tony, get back, because there's a ceremony that needs you.
Yes, we would like to see you there. Although it wouldn't surprise me if Toni Kroos wasn't. He was just like, no, I'm done now. Sorry, thank you very much. I'm actually finished. Hang up my hat. Neither of us put Phil Foden in, Dougie. 28 goals, 12 assists. Premier League Player of the Season. Premier League Club World Cup. UEFA Super Cup. It feels a bit harsh, but I just don't quite know if I have him in the same kind of place.
No, I think... No, not for me. He didn't have a good enough Euros. He had a poor Euros, I think, if it's honest to say. Man City had not a poor year. I keep on using the word poor. They had a disappointing exit out of the Champions League. And yeah, he was great down the stretch in the league. And Man City probably don't win that league title without him, with Haaland not being as clinical as he was the year before. And huge. I mean, it was a hat-trick against Villa, hat-trick against Brentford. I think he scored twice on the final day of the season. Yeah. Amazing year. He just wasn't top 5 in the world good.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Kylian Mbappe, I think we're both quite comfortable putting out of there. It was, a good season in terms of what he put out. 52 goals, 21 assists for club and country is not bad. But I think that France's sort of vaguely dismal showing at the Euros probably counts against him as well. And obviously the overarching off-field stuff and the kind of acrimonious exit from PSG hasn't probably done loads in his favour, especially given that these awards are kind of curated by France Football.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an interesting one because if in 2018 you told me that Mbappe still wouldn't have won a Ballon d'Or by 2024, I'd have been shocked, absolutely shocked. But you look at the talent coming through in that, well, what is Yamal, 16, 17 to 21 range? And there are some serious players coming through. Of this list, I had Wirtz, Bellingham and Yamal in my top 5 this year in the world, which, some people will disagree with, but it does go to show that there is so much young talent coming through, Pedri, Gavi, etc. That, I think he probably will win a Ballon d'Or, but it's looking. I'd have thought he'd have at least one by now.
Yeah, maybe. Someone that I put in last year, this is the last one I'm going to talk about. Someone that I put in last year really high after he won the absolute lot was Julian Alvarez. And you kind of think about it, and he got 21 goals and 13 assists for club and country last year. He won the Premier League. He took up a more prominent role for Manchester City in the kind of absences of Kevin De Bruyne and Erling Haaland in spells. He won the Club World Cup. He won the Copa America, although it was Lautaro that really came to the fore in that one, and the Super Cup. Alvarez's trophy collection is almost second to none at this point. It is ludicrous how many trophies that man has picked up in his relatively young career. But, 20 goal contributions in the Premier League, won the title, obviously, and was a really key role. I've kind of struggled. I don't think he's top 5 for this season. But actually, it feels like he's not being discussed at all when ultimately he did have another very successful campaign before that move across to Atletico Madrid.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels a little bit like Jorginho in 2021, where if you're involved in enough trophies, then you get yourself in the conversation. But maybe we've moved past that now, and I am quite glad of it because Jorginho finishing the top 3 of the Ballon d'Or really did frustrate me at the time. It didn't sit well with me at all. But yeah, you're right to point out what a great season he had. It's nothing against him as a player. I actually think it hasn't been totally seamless, that move to Atletico Madrid. I actually thought they'd be slightly better at the start of this season, but he's popped up with some good goals in the last month or so. So hopefully he keeps that going, but not quite in the top 5 for me. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he's top 15.
Yeah, I think I'm probably with you. There's some big names that are going to miss out, I'm afraid, but that is the way of it when you come to the sharp end of the Ballon d'Or. And with that, Dukes, I think it's probably time for us to call it a day. So all that's left for me to do is say a massive thank you to Mr. Dougie Critchley. Obviously, The Truth, Dukes, will be out on Friday. What are we discussing this week?
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Jack. It's great to be back on Ranks FC. And we've got a huge topic dropping on Friday. It is whether Kai Havertz is now an elite striker. He's perfect for The Truth, given the amount of divisive takes on him. And me and Sam and Jack get stuck into it. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited about that one and getting into the meat and bones of where Kai's got to. So that will be dropping on this feed on Friday. Make sure you're tuned in. And if you haven't listened back already to the rest of the Truth episodes, we've covered some incredible topics there with Sam and Dougie leading the affront, leading the fray into some of the most divisive topics in football. But for now, all that's left for me to do is say thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate you as ever, squad. And we'll see you very shortly. Take it easy. Peace.
Your dining room is the heart of your home, where meals are shared and memories are made. At Ashley, you'll find affordable dining furniture in a range of classic and modern styles. Ashley's small space sets and extendable tables are designed to fit beautifully into any space, from cozy breakfast nooks and kitchens to formal dining areas fit for a feast. And with mix-and-match seating options, everyone at your table gets the perfect seat. At Ashley, style is served. Shop in-store or online today.